fancy copies of our report. Has everyone had a chance to review this?
Has much changed since the draft?
No, just mainly formatting issues.
Thank you. Thank you.
Make a round of introductions quickly. I don't think Ryan's familiar with everyone. I'm Blaine Stewart, General Manager.
Hello again. I'm one of the directors, Heber City Council. And Blaine Potter, also on the Heber City Council.
Alan Bonner, Intercity.
Colleen Bonner, Midway City Mayor.
Bob Wallace, Charleston Town Mayor. Jay Price, Wasatch County Council. Joe?
Oh, no, Joe Dunback, General Counsel.
You're probably tired of seeing Bar.
Carly.
Schindler, employee.
Harold Wilson, Operations Manager.
Jason Norman, Generation Manager.
Carly, you're not just an employee, you are the board secretary. We appreciate that.
And we probably ought to, for the recording, acknowledge the presence of Tracy Taylor.
Stand up or
Oh, you're on, no?
stay here? Whatever you prefer. Okay, so this is our finally. It's all come together beautifully now. This is our final audit report. And so in here, the three main things I wanted to discuss, and then we can ask questions as you wish, or even during, or there's three main reports that we're required to issue. And so the very first one is on page 1. This is called the Independent Auditors Report. And this report mainly covers the financial statements that you'll see in the report, and then there's two other reports that we're required to issue for governmental standards and then also Utah state standards. So if we go to the very first page, second paragraph talks about management's responsibility, and quickly it's management's responsibility for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements. This includes the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal controls relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements. So a lot of times people think these are our statements, we're coming in. No, this is management's represented this. It's their responsibility to have internal controls in place to accumulate the data and then also present the data. And then the next paragraph, our responsibility as independent auditors is to express an opinion on these financial statements based on our audit. And then it talks about more details of what our audit entails and what we're responsible for doing. In the middle of that fourth paragraph, it says the auditor considers internal control relevant to the entity's preparation of the financial statements. But the purpose of that is not for expressing an opinion. So we are not going in and auditing your internal controls, which would be a lot of additional work. Usually there are larger public companies that are required to do that. I mean, it's doubling the work that's required to document your internal controls and actually have those tested. So we...
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I talked to Mr. Steen about that this week. He said that would have to be added to our original contract if we wanted you to come in and make those internal controls. Do you have any sort of bare minimum cost of what that would entail for a one-time event?
Yeah. Again, typically, it's been our experience that it's about the same price as an audit. So that first year to come in and actually go through all of your internal controls and actually documenting those, getting those in formal writing and getting everyone on board, in management and the board, as to what those internal controls should be, because there's definitely a cost benefit with every internal control. You could shut the company down just worrying about internal controls.
Sure.
So there's always that cost benefit. But I would be glad to talk to Paul and get back to you if you were interested in that.
Brian, will any of that be accomplished as part of the quarterly reviews you're going to do till year end?
Definitely. So yeah, I think that's kind of what we need to separate here is, kind of in those paragraphs it says, we're aware, we try to understand a high level of what the internal controls are, and if there's any issues with that, then, we do report those to management, either verbally for the smaller ones, and then we'll see later in these other reports, ones that are required to be reported to you under governmental or state compliance issues. Does that answer those questions? So really though, the most important part of this first auditor's report is the very last paragraph on page 1 that says the opinion. And we do say, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the company as of December 31st. And that's really what everyone goes straight to, is that opinion, and that's a clean opinion, that we feel these financial statements are correct and accurate. And then, if we want to jump to second report we issued was on page 28. And so because you are a governmental entity, we're required to issue this report, which is titled the Independent Auditor's Report on Internal Control over Financial Reporting and on Compliance and Other Matters, based on our audit of the financial statements in accordance with governmental auditing standards. So again, because you're a governmental governmental entity, this report is required to be issued. So again, if we want to jump to like the third paragraph, it kind of talks about the details of what we did for internal controls related to government auditing standards. And it says, our consideration of internal control was for the limited purpose described in the prior paragraph. It's not designed to identify all deficiencies in the internal control that might be a material weakness or significant deficiency. And so I kind of just got a disclaimer that, again, our purpose in coming in here wasn't to audit these internal controls. It's just that anything that we become aware of will represent the management and the board. And so we did come across 4 issues that we reported on. I don't know if anyone wants to dig into the details of the difference between a material weakness or a significant deficiency. Those are the 2 official terms. The material weakness is it's a little more severe than a significant deficiency. And so those are listed.
So which is worse, the significant or the material?
The material weakness.
That's the worst.
Yes. So, well, it's a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies. And in internal control, says there's a possibility that a material misstatement in the financial statements might occur. So this means it's something significant enough that would potentially prevent us from giving a clean opinion. And that a significant deficiency is it's just less severe than a material. So
those deficiencies didn't prevent you from doing
that is correct. But under government auditing standards, we're required to report those in this letter. So these matters, shouldn't be a surprise to management. As soon as we come across any issues, we're talking to management about them and gaining a full understanding of what's really going on, and kind of getting their agreement that this probably should be fixed.
So you weren't looking for them, but these are ones that you just ran into in your course of just verifying the financial statements.
Exactly, yes. And so again, those 4 are listed let's start on page 32. And so, Elaine, do you want to cover these, or has everyone had a chance to look at these? Does anyone have any questions on them?
I
Okay.
think just walk through
Okay. I mean, again, this was, I'm sure we've talked about it plenty, but this was a very unusual year, probably for any entity. There's two main things that the CFO changed mid-year, and typically if that's not replaced immediately, there's no one there really to perform those functions. And due to that, that's where most of these issues are coming from. So now that you've hired a new CFO, we've been working with Bart really closely, I do not foresee any of these issues continuing next year. And so again, management's been aware of them. We've talked and discussed in depth about ways to correct those. And so if you want to go through them, we can, but I think most of them will be resolved in the next year's audit.
Let's go through that just right as to what each one did.
Yeah,
And
we can.
what's been put in place to manage
Yeah.
that.
So the first one, 2013A on page 32 is, it's called material adjustments, which are fairly large, significant adjustments that had to be made to make the financial statements correct. And so, kind of goes through criteria, condition, cause, effect. So in the condition, it says that we as auditors propose material audit adjustments to the company's records accounts in certain areas, which if they were not recorded would have resulted in a material misstatement of the company's financial statements. So,
Do you have any idea of the amount of money that you have to make adjustments on?
that's a good question. I do not know
Is it
exactly.
hundreds of thousands, is it millions?
There was a section there showing reconstruction or whatever it was called, 12 into 13.
Right, so right there on that page, you're right, there's the $700,000 was what was posted to a prior period to 2012. So that's how much.
Page 13, I think. Restatement of prior year's finances.
Right.
Thank you, Bob, good job.
Would you,
Oh, sorry.
would you anticipate that those to be caught in prior audit?
That's a good question. It's hard to say. So that's kind of what I was saying. That's the complication is the CFO was gone. And so, a lot of these issues seem to have been lingering back several years. And that's why 2012 was restated as we are technically correcting prior years, pushing it back to correctly reflect the financial statements.
So that was before this last year. You're not just saying, well, this is just the last 6 months when there was no CFO. These are problems that had gone on in prior years.
That is correct. Right.
You adjusted it for 3 years, right? 2010 to 2013, or just 2013?
Our audits only cover 2013.
Oh, dear. Okay. Understand.
The audit covered 2013, but some of these items should be cleaned up in prior periods that were done as part of our audit entries during this audit.
That makes a clean, basically clean,
Yeah.
clean year throughout.
Yeah, and then so, I mean, with Bart here, I don't foresee this being an issue going forward. A lot of that is, typically the CFO closes the books at year end. And so since he was not here to do that, I think some issues got missed. And that kind of goes along with the next one, 2013B, journal entries. There's really no one there preparing or reviewing or authorizing any journal entries that were made. And so I think management has addressed that. And then 2013C on the following page, segregation of duties. You never want one person to have full control of the books and to be able to do everything. And so, you know, with the CFO missing, you know, with a lot of knowledge and that extra person, we feel like during that 2013 period, there was not proper segregation of duties in place. And so, again, that should be remedied now that Bart is here.
So when he was here the first part of the year, did you think it was appropriate? Are you only talking about after he left?
They're talking about 2013.
Oh, 13.
Sorry, yes, 2013.
But when did he leave?
Tony was terminated on May 8th.
May. So for the first part of the year.
June 21st, he was terminated on June 21st.
So for the first part of the year, he was here.
Correct.
So can you say that it was appropriate then and just was not appropriate when he was gone, or did you make a judgment on that time period?
We didn't make a judgment, no. So, because our audit covers the full 2013 year, if there's ever any instance during that year.
Then you focus on that.
Yes, there's either, there was an issue or there wasn't, so.
With Bart in place now, which is a great asset, we're glad Bart's here, do we need other segregation of duties, what Bart's doing to watch another part to balance the system out, so it's just not just Bart or somebody else, whose duty should it be to check what Bart's doing a bit, so it's burden shared between two people instead of just the one?
Right. That's the beauty of internal controls. You're never there. You've never arrived. There's always improvements, internal controls that can be made. So, you know, I think we'll need to look throughout the year if there's extra steps and extra reviews by other people that should be made.
And that will be part of your quarterly review.
Correct.
Scope of work, as I understand
Yes. And I mean, I think Bart has a clear understanding of segregation of duties, and, you know, I think that's going to be a big part of his coming in, is to take a look at everything and see where, you know, some extra segregation of duties would help the overall entity.
What would be one of the recommendations now for that, for the board to be looking at?
Yeah, so I mean, you're right, because if Bart's going to be making any journal entries, you know, who's going to review Bart's work? There has to be someone. There has to be review. You know, we can't have Bart posting entries to the system without someone reviewing that. So who is that going to be? Is it going to be Blaine? Is it going to be the board? I mean, those are the kind of things we'll have to work throughout the year. Bart, I don't know if you've had thoughts on that yet?
I've had a lot of thoughts on it.
Yeah, we're getting there.
We're getting there, yeah. The key there is to not make something overly burdensome for any one entity or individual, so trying to identify what's the best route. Who's best to do that stuff.
You have redundancy on redundancy on redundancy. Pretty soon you gotta stop.
Well, we haven't had it at all in the past, so it's time to do something, right? And,
That's not accurate.
well,
But it's been there.
Mr. Kernes, I don't think there's any discussion on that, John.
There
It's
were
just
there were
we need to have
mistakes made,
something.
but to say that there were no internal controls is not true.
Bart, do you think it's possible for you to present some recommendations to the board about the controls that you would like, you know, for one of us or for as a group, or a rotation of assignments or something like that?
Yeah.
That'd be great. When do you think that we should ask Bart for those recommendations? Should we say it next month?
I think when the time comes, Bart will present it to us. I think we should just really let Bart.
Well, I would like to make a motion that we would have recommendations at least by our next meeting in June. I mean, obviously they don't have to be detailed to the nines, but I think we've got to start somewhere, and we can't let months drag on without recommendations about how we're going to do the oversight that we need to do.
Just for the interim, I've gone through the warrants or the minutes for the last 2 and some odd years and made an appendix of some of the things that have taken place according to the minutes. If you want to just pass those out to the board.